In today's video, we have the latest information on the Jack Eichel situation. Could he possibly be filing a grievance here in the very near future? We also have the latest on the New York Rangers and Vitaly Kravtsov. Are there changes coming with the Toronto Maple Leafs? Will the Seattle Kraken be raising a very important banner as early as this week? And we have some other information from player safety as well. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and some rumors to talk about here today. Let's kick things off with a couple of updates that came earlier today from NHL player safety. Our first incident came from the Philadelphia Flyers organization where Nicolas Aube-Kubel has been fined $2,687.50. I know these are odd amounts, but these are what's agreed to in the CBA for a kneeing incident against Florida Panthers forward Mason Marchment. And we also had a situation where Ducks captain and center iceman Ryan Getzlaf has been fined a whopping $1,000 for a dangerous trip against Minnesota Wild center Eriksson Ek. So certainly a couple of minor situations there that resulted in fines, no suspensions. Of course, we had some other incidents. We were wondering if anything will result from it, but we actually have had a pretty clean weekend here thus far. Now, of course, a pretty significant event took place here. The Seattle Kraken have now hosted their very first home game. Their arena looks to be really unique, really different, but very, modern for sure. Really cool. It seems to be the ice surface is quite low where you can see the big windows where the fans can walk up and watch. It's a really, really unique arena that I'm certainly hoping to visit sometime in the near future. Hard to say when I'll make it there, but certainly quite a sight here. The Kraken's first home goal was scored by defenseman Vince Dunn, who they acquired from the St. Louis Blues in the expansion draft. So that'll be a trivia question for future. Certainly a historic moment for Vince Dunn. They retired the number 32, obviously for being the 32nd NHL franchise, and I believe they'd also received as many as 32,000 deposits on season tickets when they did their ticket drive before they were officially granted the expansion team. So certainly there was no issue at all selling tickets in record time. They have that many deposits is just crazy. I'm sure they still have a really, really long wait list. So the Kraken will be well supported by their local fans. And as reported by Jeff Merrick on the latest 32 Thoughts segment on Hockey Night in Canada last night, he wonders if there could be another banner raised as early as this week when they play and host the Montreal Canadiens. Now, of course, as many of you know, if you follow the game and love the history of hockey, you know that this is not Seattle's first Kraken having a professional franchise. Of course, way back in the early 1900s, they had the Seattle Metropolitans. Of course, that was way back when things were different, before the official inception of the NHL. But at that point, they'd won the Stanley Cup in 1917. So even though it technically wasn't the current NHL, it was still a big part of hockey history, and the Stanley Cup was still the big trophy in the sport. So there is talk that, of course, that they may raise a Stanley Cup banner when they're hosting the Habs on, I believe it's Tuesday, that Montreal visits Seattle for the very first time. Of course, Montreal and Seattle were playing in the Stanley Cup final in 1919 when that final ended up getting halted because of the pandemic that happened over 100 years ago. So certainly a lot of significance between the two franchises. Obviously, we know that the Kraken are a very forward-thinking team, but of course they do want to make every effort to honor the past and the history of the Metropolitans as part of the current Kraken franchise. So this will be certainly unique. It's not very, it's never happened that you see an expansion team raise a Stanley Cup banner or any kind of championship banner before they ever won one in its current inception. So we could see some very unique set of circumstances there this week in Seattle. Now, some updates on COVID protocols and vaccination in the NHL. I believe the NHL will be down to one player that's unvaccinated, and that'll be Red Wings forward Tyler Bertuzzi. Looks like Mackenzie Blackwood will be considered fully vaccinated here in the short term. He is on Team Canada's list, their short list, or I guess He is on Team Canada's long list right now, potential goalies that they're considering for the Olympic Games. Of course, they had to submit their long rosters, which I believe is around 50 or so players that was submitted, I believe, last week. He is on the list of, I believe, 6 goaltenders right now under consideration for Team Canada. So belief is he will be considered fully vaccinated in the very near future and will be eligible to go should he be selected. So that solely leaves Bertuzzi. And as we briefly talked about before, there is talk that there could be some relaxed rules coming when it comes to COVID testing. But as Elliot Friedman reported on the 32 Thoughts segment, he's not sure that they're going to go down that road. There is some pushback from some of the doctors involved that are obviously part of their protocols, that they don't want to miss any situations that get detected too late, cause an outbreak, which could impact the schedule and having games canceled, and obviously possibly impact people's health as well, which is certainly at most importance here. So we'll see. If not soon, then it will happen eventually where the rules will be relaxed. The NHL is testing at a much higher rate than other professional sports, and they also have a much higher rate of vaccination. So in theory, it should be safer for them to be able to relax those rules. But at the same time, as we've seen, just because you have the vaccine, it doesn't mean 100% that you're not going to possibly pick up the virus or possibly pass it on. So we'll see what they decide to do, but there is going to be some discussion about that, and a meeting is, I believe, scheduled for November the 1st. Now, into today's NHL Trade Talk action, we do get some more information here from this 32 Thoughts segment and some other pieces as well. For example, is the sky falling in Toronto? I mean, we know that there was a lot of pressure on Montreal after an 0-5 start. They finally won a game, so there's a little bit of good news there. But then we see the Leafs haven't had a great start themselves, end up falling 7-1 to close to an equivalent of an AHL team in Pittsburgh. I mean, they still have some good talent on the ice. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to show any disrespect to the solid players that did play, but when you're without Crosby, you're without Malkin, you're without Letang, you're also without Jeff Carter, and you're without Brian Rust, and you handily beat a talented, offensively gifted team in Toronto, it's going to get scrutinized a lot in Leafland, and that is for certain. So there's already a lot of social media talk about changes. Like I know Mike Babcock, I believe, was let go after a bad loss in Pittsburgh. There's a lot of people saying, is that going to happen to Sheldon Keefe? I really don't think that's the case right now. Will the Leafs make changes? I wouldn't be completely shocked if they did, but I don't see it being the head coach, at least not as of yet. It's way too early for that. It's not like they have like an 0-6 or 0-7 start. Yes, that was a really bad game, but at the end of the day here, it's early. We need to put all the stress on that, but you don't want to get into these bad patterns early that you can't break out of. Certainly their top guys like Matthews and Marner not having a good start. In my opinion, Marner hasn't looked right. I think the kid's confidence is shot. Hopefully he can get that back for his sake, because he just doesn't look the same out there. William Nylander, in my opinion, has been their best player, their best forward for sure. Jason Spezza has been real good. And outside of that, they've got too many passengers. I mean, Nick Ritchie has yet to produce any points. There's some people kind of had some unfavorable things to say about him. Looks like Keefe has kind of adjusted his ice time a little bit. Bunting's been good. They've got a variety of things there. So could we see some changes in Toronto? I don't think we're going to see anything major. I wouldn't be shocked if there's something minor to shake things up, to maybe send a message. Could they maybe make a small trade on a depth piece? That to me is about all we're going to see right now. But I guess if these kind of losses continue to pile up, it's a matter of time before they pull the trigger here, because you got to think that after all these consecutive years of first round losses in the playoffs, and now when you're having bad losses like that, you got to get into playoffs to even hope to overcome that. Could something come down from the top? I don't know how much pressure there is from ownership down through Shanahan to Dubas and all that. Like, we'll have to see, but I think that's certainly something they hope to rebound from and move on. But as this season continues, you have to wonder of the confidence level of some of these young Leaf players with a ton of skill that just can't seem to produce right now. Now on to some other teams. I want to talk about the Rangers a bit. Obviously, Vitaly Kravtsov still getting a lot of attention. As Jeff Merrick reported on 32 Thoughts, the segment on Hockey Night in Canada, he said that they're not budging, the Rangers that is, on their asking price, which is another top prospect in return. Certainly, Chris Drury, as we've seen before, does not succumb to pressure when it comes to trade requests. They've gone through this with Elias Anderson. Of course, he was a GM for their AHL team at that point in time. So, of course, he basically was heavily involved in that case. So, I don't see that, being, if they'll hang on to him as long as they need to get the right return. They'll let him stay in Russia. I really don't think they care. This is not the first time that Kravtsov has pulled a stunt like this, but it is the same first time I believe he's actually officially requested a trade. When he first came over, he did have a European out clause that if he wasn't playing in the NHL, he could go back and play in another league in Europe or Russia. And at this point, that's not necessarily an option. They're likely not going to loan him to another league. I would imagine they're going to make him sit and they're going to make him wait. And when they get the right return, they'll do it possibly. But at this point, there's no real timetable on what that's going to be. But if another team wants to pony up a decent top prospect that they would like, that's what it's going to take to get this deal done. Now, when it comes to other players from that same draft as Kravtsov, another player getting a lot of attention is Coyotes youngster Barrett Hayton. Now, there was word and rumor that Hayton had requested a trade out of Arizona. You could certainly wonder a little bit about how his development has been handled thus far in his young career with the Coyotes. A lot of up and down. Certainly a player who's gotten... many wonder if he was drafted too high, and maybe was he rushed along too quickly. But I know that his head coach Andre Tourigny, who's new in the Coyotes organization this year, does have a previous relationship with him. They did have a great experience together at the World Juniors, where Tourigny coached Team Canada and named Barrett Hayton team captain. So we know he's fond of him as a player. So I would think that it's not exactly a player that the Coyotes are going out there and shopping, but the Coyotes are engaged in a lot of other conversations right now. There is a lot of scouts at a recent game, which many believe were looking at Phil Kessel. And really, as they've also reported here on the 32 Thoughts segment, if your name is not Jacob Chikrin and you play for the Coyotes, you're probably in play and you could be traded. And that includes a guy even like Clayton Keller, who I think the Coyotes would part with for the right deal. I don't think they're sold on anybody outside of Chikrin here. They're really kind of stockpiling all the picks and prospects. But at this point, when teams are talking to Arizona, because they have those other guys involved, they are asking a lot about Barrett Hayton, which is what many believe kind of spawned this to kind of hit the rumor mill that maybe he wants out. That doesn't seem to be the case. Just a case of a lot of interest in getting him out of the Coyotes organization. But as we've talked about before, the Coyotes are a team that we expect to be extremely busy as the season goes on. Kessel's one of the main players at play. Hayton could be one if the right deal comes along, but that's far from a guarantee. And we'll see where things go from there. And we do have some developments in the Jack Eichel situation, as Elliot Friedman talked about on that 32 Thoughts segment as well. A lot of information on Saturday night that he could be filing a grievance here just about any time. As Friedman mentioned, he doesn't think it's going to be like a day or two, but certainly not too far into the future, within a week, maybe two at most. If a trade is not completed, or if Eichel and the Sabres do not come to an agreement to essentially give him what he's looking for, he is going to be filing a grievance through the PA. And of course, as Friedman mentioned, he's not a lawyer, so he doesn't know how this is going to go. I would basically say the same thing. But as we've mentioned before from other news reports that have come out, Pat Brisson, his new agent, and Eichel have been seeing several doctors, as many that they can, trying to garner a bigger case against Buffalo that they should allow him to have the surgery he's looking for the disc replacement. And if they have enough data to suggest that there's enough there to suggest it's a really good, safe surgery and that Eichel should have the option, then they wouldn't file a grievance if they didn't seriously think that they had enough evidence to win that battle. So we will see what happens. But if things end up in kind of, litigation, so to speak, from a grievance being filed, that very well could slow down any kind of trade talks. It's already been slow enough here. And if things drag on for a while they're going through that's probably going to really slow things down. Teams are going to want to probably wait and see how that plays out before any kind of trade can be considered. But at the same time, you have to think that the Eichel camp and his agent are probably making that public to kind of put some pressure on the Sabres to either give them what they want or to get a trade done as soon as possible. And we'll see where things go from there. I would imagine they probably don't really want to file the grievance, But as time goes on, they're only willing to wait so long before they pull the trigger and make that happen. Again, though, it's really hard to say if they really stand a good chance to win or not. Only time will tell, and we'll have to see where things go. But that's the latest on the Jack Eichel situation. So if you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We will keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time.